morning, everybody. Good morning, Rosewood. Welcome to the August Leadership Live. We're almost wrapping up the quarter. We're halfway there, and then got 3 more sessions, so we'll completed our Rosewood, so our Leadership Live course for the year. All right, so going into the PowerPoint, welcome everybody. Leadership Live, August. For everybody who's joining us, we are going through emotional intelligence with Andrew. If you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. We always start with our purpose, our reason why, and it's to multiply the blessings and opportunities that have been put on to our trust, and Leadership Live is one of those. We partner up with Campbell, offer free webinars. We partner up with professors, with doctors, with life coaches, with entrepreneurs, with CEOs, and with directors from all different kind of fields to kind of help us and push us into that learning each and little ways to get better to our core values, and also our techniques when it comes to leadership and emotional intelligence and so on. So this is going to be a good one. Emotional intelligence has always been a favorite of mine. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see what we've covered thus far. We've embraced change in Q1. Q2, our customers are our business. We wrapped that one up. Everybody should be receiving their pins later on this week, and we're close to wrapping up emotional intelligence, the we before me core value. So for further ado, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Sweet. Y'all, good morning. I'm so happy to be with you. My name is Andrew Florence. I'm the Director of Experiential Learning at Crossner Communities for Children and a faculty member for the Center for Trauma Resilient Communities. I'm currently calling you from Elon University. I'm also an adjunct faculty in the School of Education here. We are without power in Southern Guilford County. The storms that passed through yesterday knocked out our power yesterday afternoon, and so it's just been a little chaotic. And I hope that if you're in the Durham, Raleigh, that stretch there that got hit pretty hard yesterday, I hope you're okay and that you're taking care of what you need, and we'll be okay. I spend a lot of my time working with teams, particularly around our values and what are the ways that we show up and build and sustain nourished and thriving teams, whether that's with kids and building community together, or if that's corporate organizations, or if that's nonprofits, schools. I've worked with a lot of organizations across the state and across the Eastern United States. Just to give you an idea of where we're going to spend our time today, we're going to start off with connection before content. I spent some time with y'all last year, and we talked about psychological safety and the importance of connection before content. So we're going to visit that again this morning. Then we're going to jump into emotional intelligence and EQ and understanding our emotions. We're going to talk about DiSC, about the DiSC framework, pair the two together, comparing DiSC with emotional intelligence. And then I'm going to give you 2 new concepts, hopefully, or if you know them already, then you can jump into the chat and you can help improve even what we already know with the SCARF model from David Rock. And then we're going to talk about a new concept called reenactment, which is sometimes we just don't make sense. We don't make a whole lot of sense. So, idea of connection before content comes from Peter Block, who's an author. He wrote a book. This phrase comes from the book Community. And the idea of connection before content is that before we get into the work of what it is that we're meant to do, the reason that we're together for a meeting or any convening is that we have to connect to 3 things. We've got to connect to ourselves. So Andrew has to connect to Andrew. We've got to connect to each other. I've got to connect to you. You've got to connect to me. And then we also have to connect to our purpose. I love that that Antonio shared off those values. And I have seen that those values are so important to you as Rosewood. What's the reason that we exist? And so before we get into the content of the slides, I'm going to ask Antonio to drop this link in the chat for the climber cards. What you'll be able to see when you go to this link is a whole deck of cards from an experiential educator and trainer named Amy Clymer, who's based out of Asheville. See a whole bunch of different images here, and I invite you to think about what is a value that's most important to you in work. I would encourage you thinking about those kind of core values that you hold as Rosewood, what are the ways that you intersect into that? What is it that you bring that ties into what's the organizational values? So what you'll do, you'll click the card. So for me today, this butterfly, put your name in there, and then why you chose the card. So for me, this butterfly is representing adaptability, being able to be flexible, understand that we're capable more than we can imagine. I'm going to change that to I'm capable of more than I can imagine. On it. And what we'll be able to see here as you select those cards is that we'll be able to see folks' values here as we're starting off with really, we're talking about behavior and emotions and the intersection of how we show up at work. So if we can start with our values, what's most important to you individually? Maybe we can start on some common ground. Shani, I hope I said that right. And if I didn't, please forgive me.
You did,
Shani,
thank you.
Thank you. Shani said, strengths. So this cairn, this stack of rocks signifies what it takes to move forward and be successful. Josh said, interconnectedness is very important. Each person and process relies on another to work. Josh, I love that. Love that you shared that, that interdependence, that interconnectedness, that we don't, no person is an island. We all depend on each other. Sherry, sunshine. Sometimes work is hard, but if you stay in the sunshine, you can have fun and have a great day. I love it, Sherry. Shine bright. Hopefully not as bright as it's been in July and August. A fan, a nice breeze. Rosie, part of a whole, helping one another and creating something beautiful. I love that. Thanks, Rosie. You got a piece. You got a piece to the puzzle. You fit right in. Melissa took the puzzle piece too and said collaboration, being able to work with others to put each piece together to form a cohesive puzzle. Awesome. Nayania, and I hope I said that right, love can change the world. Love that. I love the audacity of that. Thank you. Consuela, I feel as we are all pieces to the bigger puzzle, when we work together, we complete it. Nice. Kathy, creativity and putting things together, being able to build and create something that is useful, helpful, and effective. Cool. Tim, ability to work on many tasks at the same time. Tim, if you can do 8 tasks like an octopus at one time successfully, I want to spend some time around you. That's amazing. Christina, community and family reminds me of coming together and leaning on each other when there is darkness or hardship. Cool. Antonio, a doer, help my team and Rosewood get our tasks done on time and hit out KPIs. Knock them out, man. Somebody's got to do it. Oh, I love it. Keep them coming, y'all. This is so good. And if there's anything that you're noticing, because you spend all the time that you have together, if there's anything that you're noticing as you see these values, I invite you to come off mute and share your insights. Thanks, Houston and Steve and Kevin, Tramikia, Maya, Chandler. Thanks for sharing too. And Kellen. This is great. I invite you to hold that value. Keep in mind that image that you picked and the value that you tied to that. I invite you to keep that in your mind as we go into this content, as we start to explore emotions, which are subjective and they're different for each person. How we feel and how we operate in the world and how things impact us is different. How we behave is different, and it's once we start to establish some common language and we start to share some perspective, that's where we start to find some common ground. China said, perseverance, sometimes there will be tough waters, but the will to keep going is important. Like it. Okay, thanks, y'all. And there will be a couple other points where I'll ask you to pull out that mobile device, or if it's a browser, if that's easiest for you to jump in and contribute to what's going on, so that we can make sure that we're all voices are represented. So as we go into this content, I want to share this iceberg both as a frame and as a metaphor for us. So when we think about behaviors are the top of the iceberg. We see it, it's the evident part. And when we're getting into the content today of the DiSC, that's going to really focus on the top portion of the iceberg. Underneath that, though, underneath the water, what we see are the feelings and the wants and the needs and our values and our history and our context, all the things that have shaped us. And those are the pieces that sometimes are a little mysterious and also what make up the majority of the iceberg. So that's where, when we're talking through emotional intelligence concepts and we're talking about the SCARF model and we're talking through reenactment, we're really looking underneath the water. We're trying to get at what's behind the behavior. Feelings drive behavior. Feelings are important because they can indicate needs that are met or not being met. And also, if you look at cognitive neuroscience research, the most current research says that we are aware of about 5% of our cognition. 5% though. So that means there's 95% of what's happening inside of our brain, which is where all of this resides, or a lot of this resides. 95% of that is under the water. It's out of our our scope of awareness. So as we build that 95% that's under the water, we start to understand what is behind the behavior. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize emotions, either yours or another person's, and to choose how to respond. This, for you parents in the call, that second part is especially important. I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and sometimes it's a struggle. You're with me, especially here in the summer. We're making it. School's almost back. The end is in sight. We got this, y'all. Today, we're going to really focus on the kind of self-awareness section of the emotional intelligence domains and competencies, that emotional self-awareness, and then the social awareness portion of empathy and organizational awareness. I'd love to hear, what is the role of emotional intelligence in your role as a leader at Rosewood? I'd love to invite folks to come off chat. I'd love to hear what's the capacity or what's the role that EQ plays for you?
At least for me, I guess I would say maybe being able to have a conversation with other coworkers in a fun and enjoyable manner.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for being bold and vulnerable to break the ice and get out there. Yeah, the ability to have a fun connection opportunity. We are wired for connection. We're hardwired, regardless of where you land on the introversion extroversion paradigm or spectrum. We are hardwired to be connected to each other.
I like to reuse a phrase that someone taught to me many years ago, grace under pressure.
Ooh,
is a part of this. Nice.
Grace under pressure. Emotional intelligence allows grace under pressure. We can run the webinar there. Maybe one more person who wants to share what role EQ or emotional intelligence plays for you. Okay.
I would say as growth, giving good positive feedback, learning from your mistakes, and just trying to help your employees, your team grow, and make sure they know it's okay to fail and make sure it's okay to try. And I know in today's age, it's kind of hard to, you can't really fail, but just encourage that and open that for room to grow.
Yeah. Thanks, Antonio. I love a really helpful shift for me, or something that's been helpful for me to shift my understanding of that idea of failure is that we often, if we can shift away from success and failure as being a kind of a one or an all or nothing, as if maybe we've got some successes and we've got some learning moments, right? Even when we miss the mark, if we can take that self-awareness and we can take that that self-control and these skills and these capacities and reframe it for ourselves, we have gotten an incredible amount of data. When we miss the mark or something doesn't go exactly how we envisioned, treat it like a scientist. We've got this this experiment that we're playing with, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're going to learn something on the way. That's great. This is I spend a lot of time working with kids in my capacity, and so we're going to build up a little bit of self-awareness language here. I invite you to pull out a pen and a sticky note or a scrap sheet of paper, or if you need to pull up a phone and open a note. We're going to have here in just a second, we're going to use the characters from Inside Out, which is a Pixar movie. If you're not a parent, it is a Pixar movie from the mid to late 2000s, I think, or maybe early 2010s. And we're going to visit each of these characters. You're going to have about 30 seconds with each of these words, these primary, if we think about these as kind of umbrella words in the kind of emotional language places. I'm going to invite you to, we're going to visit one at a time. You're going to have about 30 seconds to write down as many synonyms for that emotion as you can come up with. Okay, so take your pencil, your pen, marker, Sharpie, highlighter, whatever you got, scrap sheet of paper. You're gonna have 30 seconds. We're gonna start with joy. So 30 seconds, writing down as many synonyms, words that are like the word joy as you can come up with. And ready, go. 30 seconds to write as many synonyms for the word joy. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Okay. We're going to go next to sadness. So you're going to have 30 seconds to write as many synonyms for the word sadness. If you can think about what are emotions that are related to sadness, 30 seconds. Write as many of those words as you can get now. 30 seconds starts now. And stop. That's 30 seconds for sadness. Here we go. We're going to move on to fear, bottom right. Think about all the words that you can connect underneath the umbrella of fear. Fear's the major emotion. What are all the nuanced, like really intense fear versus like the just a little bit fear? 30 seconds for synonyms of fear starts now. And 3, 2, 1. Nice job. Next one, we're going to go to anger. I was doing something similar with a group of teachers yesterday. They had a lot of fun with this one. All of the different versions of anger. So you're going to have 30 seconds again to come up with as many words that are similar, as many emotions. You can even use phrases if you need to, if that helps to envision what you might say if you're angry. 30 seconds starts now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great job. Last one. We're going over to disgust. 30 seconds. Come up. Last time you're going to do it. Come up with as many words, synonyms that you can think of that fit underneath the major emotion of disgust. 30 seconds for disgust starts now. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's time on disgust. Great job. Now, as we try to build out our language and our understanding, we're trying to build what's underneath that waterline. We're trying to build out our self-awareness. Oftentimes we think about, if you think about when someone asks you how your day has been, oftentimes we're going to resort to those 2, 3, 4 words that are typical for how we're feeling. And often it's helpful for us to expand that language so that we understand a bit more what's underneath. So we really tap into what's going on with ourselves. So that we can capture some of those the goodness of what you just came up with. I'm going to share this. We're going to do a quick Minty poll, and Antonio, if you'll drop this one in the chat too. I should be able to also. Ooh, nope, I can't. Maybe I can. Hold on. There it is. If you need to pull up a QR code, if that's easier for you to access, what are some of those synonyms for the word joy? What are some of the words that you came up with? Let's show off a little bit. Exuberance. I love it. It's such a fun word to say. I'm feeling exuberant. And this is a word cloud, so that the more times that these words come up, the text is going to be larger. So you're going to see some similarity. These are maybe some of the more common emotional states that you and your peers can come up with. A-OK. I like it. One of my colleagues who was in our maintenance department, he said to me once that he was happy as a clam at high tide. That is a very clear image. I like it. Fun, pleasure, pure, peace, gleeful, zeal, glory. Nice. Dandy. Feeling dandy. Carefree. Merriment. I like it. Happy. Yeah. Common one there. Nirvana. Ooh. Jumping for joy. I like it. Euphoria. Y'all did great. Listen, you're doing a fantastic job. Great job identifying what was under those 5 major emotions. I'm going to share a couple of tools for you that maybe, if you find that sometimes it's hard for you to find the language for what's going on with you, which then again, that finding that language helps us to understand what's above the water, what people are seeing, what our loved ones and our colleagues, they see what the feeling is driving. So they see the happiness, they see the exuberance, they see the impact of that. And what's underneath that, that's where we've got to do the work of the self-awareness and understand what's going on underneath the water. So sometimes it's difficult. Know that that's okay. That's a very typical human experience. And also we come into different contexts with emotions often that are labeled as good emotions or bad emotions or a positive emotion or a negative emotion. And they just they're all valuable. They're all important. They're all valid even. And sometimes if you need a kind of like if it helps you to think in regions, if you think about emotions that indicate that your needs are being met versus ones that indicate maybe you have some unmet needs, then we can identify what's going on and maybe what's underneath the surface. This is an emotion or a feeling wheel. You can find them online pretty quick and easy if you do a quick Google search. Here in the middle are the kind of major emotions, and as you move out, it's going to start to get a little bit more specific. So if you know what, I just feel kind of sad. Well, am I sad because I'm embarrassed, or am I feeling sad, because I'm feeling isolated? Those are two kind of different ends of the spectrum of sadness, right? And those indicate different needs, and also perhaps a different way of behaving too, what folks around you might notice. This one is a great tool. This is one that I wanted to share because sometimes maybe we can identify that behavior and what's on the outside, but not necessarily what's on going on underneath the water. This is the emotion sensation wheel from a therapist named Lindsay Brahman. And so on the outside of this emotion sensation wheel, you'll see like physical sensations, like feeling hot. So on this one, a really helpful way is to use this one is maybe if you can identify what's happening with your body, then you can work backwards. You can kind of work from the behavior, the top of the iceberg, down towards underneath the water and understand, oh, okay, so I'm feeling, if I'm feeling hot, maybe I'm feeling insecure. And because I'm feeling insecure, maybe I'm feeling a little angry. And these are all subjective, again, because we have different experiences. This is not to say that if you feel hot, it could not also mean that you feel lonely, or that it could mean that you feel confused. Sometimes people, you have a different visceral response to different emotions. And this is really just this visual here I'm sharing in to identify that that all of those emotions show up in our body, that our feelings show up in our body, stress being a really important indicator for what's happening, when we're satisfied, when we're not satisfied, that our body tells us what's going on. Whether we want to ignore the feeling, if we have the time and space for that, if it's safe to do so, or if we need to maybe take some time and find that safety. So now we're going to jump into the DiSC. The DiSC framework was first created or first introduced by this man, William Moulton Marston, in his 1928 book, Emotions of Normal People. I don't know about y'all, I still have not met a single normal person in my life, and I love it for that reason. We're all just making it, right? No such thing as normal. The two questions that William Moulton Marston was really the intersection of the DiSC that he offered was around two dimensions. Are you assertive, or are you more cautious and steady? And then the second question, do you question what you are told, or are you receptive to what you are told? So the first question, are you assertive, or are you more cautious and steady? That being one spectrum. And then the other spectrum being, do you question what you're told, or are you receptive to what you are told? So as we go into this content, if you already know your DiSC, then this is great. And if not, or if you need a little reminder, we're going to have a really quick check-in here. So if you just refresh that window that you were on Menti.com, or if you need to rescan this this QR code here, you can do that. Click the link. So thinking about these two spectrums, think about where do you sit on average? How do you typically operate, maybe at work? Are you more on the questioning and skeptical end, or are you more warm and accepting? Are you, so that's one side. And then the other question, are you more fast-paced and enthusiastic, or are you more cautious and reflective? And we're going to see people's little dots showing up here in the 4 quadrants. So this is going to break us down into the framework, give us a little insight. And this is a quick answer, a quick one question assessment. So I do want to frame it with that if you want a more thorough kind of understanding of your DiSC profile, there are different assessments that are available, and maybe going into a full assessment would give you a better kind of grasp of where you land. But if you look here, so this one right here that's in the middle, that's the average of all of your answers. But if you plop out here, you kind of figure out where your little bubble went, this top left quadrant up here is going to be our D types, our Ds. The top right is going to be the I, the bottom right, the S, and the bottom left is the C. We're going to go into that here in just a second. Just so you have a kind of a frame of those two spectrums of, are you more cautious? Are you more cautious and steady, or are you assertive? And then the other, are you questioning, or do you do what you're told? Receptive to what you're told, excuse me. Thank you for responding, everyone. So, fun fact about the author of this book, William Moulton Marston, he invented the lie detector test and also introduced Wonder Woman to the DiSC world, to the comic book world. And it was originally categorized expression of emotions into 4 types. So it's a little different now, and we'll talk about it in a second. But originally it was dominance, inducement, submission, and compliance. So that was what Marston originally shared as the 4 kind of major behavioral expressions of emotions. The behavior above the water could be broken down into dominance, inducement, submission, and compliance. In 1976, or 1970s rather, it was updated by John Geyer from the University of Minnesota Department of Health Sciences into what's now dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So that if you were up in the top left quadrant, if you're in the top left quadrant of that that last question, you are going to be someone whose behaviors are primarily a dominant style. If you're in the top right, that's going to be an influence style. The bottom right is going to be S, which is going to be steadiness, and then the bottom left is conscientiousness. If you understand your primary behavioral trait, it can help you to understand and manage your experiences and foster relationships. It gives us that common language of how we're showing up and what's underneath the waterline, so that we can recognize what's happening above. And it also measures the priority of our values. So if you take this graphic that's on the right is from the DiSC profile assessment, and the words that are on the outside are, if you take this assessment, are customized based on your responses to the questions on what are the values that are most important to you at work. Just a quick broad strokes overview of each type. The dominant style wants to shape their environment by overcoming opposition to accomplish results. So often these are people who are really direct and blunt, can be strong-willed, driven, they're fast-paced, move towards action, and they're self-confident. That's the real gift, is that they feel confident with themselves. The behaviors that you see in dominance types, they see the big picture, they accept challenges, and get straight to the point. There's no need to beat around the bush when we can just say what's needed to be said, and get on to the next point. Dominant style folks are commanding and pioneering. Dominance type people also need to work on their patience, sensitivity, ability to look at details, and ability to allow for deliberation. So allowing for other types and other approaches to recognize that people have feelings that are important, and that sometimes people need some time to process before they can make a decision. Not everybody's as fast and self-confident, assured as a dominance type. Someone who leads with an influence style is really looking to shape their environment by persuading others. So they're the things that are most important to influence types are openness and friendship and relationships. They're going to typically be really enthusiastic and optimistic and convincing and warm and trusting. It feels pretty nice to be around someone who is an influence style. They're really collaborative typically in terms of their behavior. They don't like being ignored because I think that can often feel like isolation or disconnection. So kind of a direct opposite of what their values are. And they also fear the loss of influence, which we're going to hold on to that one for once we get to the SCARF model. And influence folks, what's really important for folks leading with an influence style is to work on follow through. Sometimes can end with not getting excuse me, to the action and focusing more on the relationships. Steadiness, right? So this would be folks who, excuse me, they want to work within existing circumstances to carry out tasks. It's important for people with steadiness as their primary style to feel cooperative and to feel sincere and to feel dependable. They're going to be pretty calm and patient and accommodating and consistent. They provide support. They're going to go towards asking what they can do to help, and they don't like to be rushed and can sometimes avoid change, can feel a little bit like they need some more stability or stasis predictability. They are inclusive. The steadiness style is really good at making people feel like they're a part of the whole, and they're also really affirming. They're going to recognize what people are best at. People with this dominant or this style, steadiness, have to work on adapting to change and to confronting others. Sometimes that melding and that cooperative nature can turn into allowing things to slip past that don't need to happen. The last style, conscientiousness. These folks want to they value expertise and competency and objective reasoning. So they're analytical, they're careful, they're cautious, thoughtful, they're diplomatic and tactful. They're going to bring in a lot of information before making a decision. They maintain stability. They challenge assumptions. So they're going to push back on what is maybe status quo. They're deliberate and humble and resolute. Conscientious style folks need to work on delegating, compromising, and making quick decisions. That's quick and dirty on the DiSC. If we combine EQ, the concept of emotional intelligence, with the DiSC, you can see here on the right a really helpful visual in terms of thinking about those four major approaches, or those four major styles in the DiSC framework. If you've got low emotional intelligence, what may happen or what we may see is some low level operation. And if we combine it with high levels of emotional intelligence, we can see maybe more developed sense of self. This is really helpful in organizations and in teams because it helps us use the same language. It helps us raise self-awareness, improve teamwork, use conflict productively. Conflict, especially if you were born and raised in the South, conflict is a four-letter word and you don't use it, and it's dangerous and it's scary. We all come to conflict with different baggage and understanding. And so if we can understand the conflict as feedback and a gift to be received, it can help us develop, and it helps our teams and organizations move forward. And also the limitation with DiSC as a framework is that it focuses entirely on behavior. So we're looking only at the above the water. We're missing out on what's underneath. So if we pair the two, if we pair DiSC with emotional intelligence, and I'm hopeful that that the SCARF model and reenactment will help to expand that a bit for us. Then we can start to build out the entirety of the iceberg. We talked briefly about psychological safety in the presentation I did last year. And if you missed that, that's okay. It's really helpful to frame this in terms of, or the DiSC framework in terms of each type needing, having a different psychological need. So what's the things that are going to help us to feel safe and help us feel like we can trust the people around us, that we can show up. Trust is not that I can predict that Antonio will always act this way and I can put him into a box. That's not the type of trust we're after. The type of trust we're after is that I can show Antonio the parts of me that are in development and the parts that are vulnerable and that are maybe that could be harmed, and know and believe that Antonio will protect that and hold it as sacred. So these are the pieces. You can look there at your dominant style, or excuse me, your the style that you lead with for the DiSC, and what are maybe those psychological needs that are most important to you. And why that's important: when our psychological needs are not being met, we often see the stress response. This is the fight or flight has been popular language for a really long time, and we're constantly being bombarded with that. Our brains and our bodies are always keeping ourselves safe. We can expand the language of fight or flight to fight, flight, freeze, appease, and collapse. So you can imagine that you see a tiger. Are you going to fight the tiger? Are you running from the tiger? Are you going into like statue mode? Are you going to tell the tiger how beautiful it is and play dead? Or are you going to have a nervous system collapse and faint? Our nervous systems are always taking care of our bodies. And we're constantly receiving stress, and so particularly when our psychological needs are not met at work, we receive that stress, and we maybe need to inspect why that's happening. What is it? What's the value? What's important to me? This is where SCARF starts to come in and helps us to understand what's happening to us and what's most important. And again, it's really important to remember that about 5% of what's happening in our brain is what we're actually aware of. 95% is happening automatic. And it's difficult to control. When it's automatic, when it's the behavioral response that's buried deep in the brain, it's hard to control. So David Rock, this is a great model that from 2008, that these 5 realms, it's an acronym, SCARF: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. That in work, he's a neuroscientist, and he wrote Quiet Leadership, and he founded the Neuro Leadership Institute. That each of these 5 things for us in a work context, when our brains go into that stress response, it's typically one or multiple of these things that feels like unsettled for us at work. So for some of us, status is really important at work, our sense of relative importance to others. So making sure that our social position is safe. Sometimes it may be about the title change, or it may be about the corner office, or whatever those subconscious subliminal messages that indicate our value and worth through status. Status is important to us. The next one, certainty, our ability to predict and be certain of the future. So certainty is important to some folks, and why sometimes when things are unpredictable, that's when some folks, if we connect this back to DiSC, why some folks start to feel uncomfortable or start to feel that fight, flight, freeze response is because things are unstable. What common or the most up-to-date research shows about high functioning effective teams is that they're actually really unstable. what they're doing is implementing that growth and change and learning constantly. And what that does is that creates some instability. So it's difficult sometimes for folks who are really, certainty is really important for you. That may be difficult in high functioning teams. Autonomy, this one's really important for me, and I didn't realize it until I had this framework. And this is about our sense of control over self, our sense of control over events, how things go. For a lot of my career, I have had to be a specialist and the person who kind of runs things by myself. And I didn't realize until I started to have more people around me supporting me and additional folks contributing to the same work, that I started to realize, oh wow, I don't have control over all of this. And it started to feel a little bit more uncomfortable than it did originally. Relatedness, this one's also really important for me personally. It's about our sense of safety with others. So, and these all connect, again, this is neuroscience stuff. You think back to 2,000 years ago, or thousands of years ago, early humans, relatedness was important, because if you weren't related, if you weren't part of the collective, you might starve, or you might go without shelter, or you might go without the provision of what your needs. So relatedness is important for us in work, because it's about us being connected and belonging. Fairness, the last one. It's our perception of fair exchanges between people. So this is really about equity. This is about seeing, am I being treated in a fair and just way? Are my colleagues being treated in a fair and just way? So as you see that, you can see here, these are all things with all these 5 realms, the status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. We're either working on a reward state activator, or we're working from a threat state activator. So if you are getting the things that you need, and you are feeling really like your needs are being met, those psychological needs that we talked about with that DiSC framework, we're talking about the reward state activator. For me, when I have a high level of choice and I feel empowered, and I feel like I can be organized, or for me as someone where relatedness is really important, when I feel connected to people, when I feel like the team around me is thriving and well established, I'm feeling really safe and secure. When I'm not feeling that way, when those things are feeling threatened, I might like if I feel micromanaged, or if I feel like I don't have control over what's happening, I'm going to start to feel that threat, those stress responses. Or with relatedness, if I feel left out, if I feel like I'm cast aside, I may start to feel that threat response. So for you, if you could take a second as you look through this list here of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness, which area or areas might be significant to your feeling safe in a work context? If you pair that with the DiSC, if you pair that to your own self-awareness, which of these areas might be significant to your feeling safe? And you can type that in the chat. And Antonio, if you would, if people are typing it in the chat, if you'd read it out, or if you want to come off mute, I invite you to do that as well. What of these realms might be important to you to feeling safe at work? Think about the times that you have felt really like things are going well within your team or your organization. That maybe is a helpful frame for starting to look at that the reward state activators. What are the things that were going really well? Was it about status? Your team was recognized, or you were recognized for really hard work? Was it that things were consistent and things were you kind of knew what was going to happen over the next 3-6 months, and you had kind of stability there, or you had executive leadership who was really, they had been in their positions for a long time, and there was stability there? Or did you have the ability to have control over your work? Did you feel really connected to the people who are working around you? A lot of us struggled with that one in the COVID pandemic when we're working from home, or if you're still working from home, working hybrid, the ability to feel safe around others. And then that last one, fairness. If you felt like, you know what, we're getting pay band increases, or we're seeing people are treated justly and people are getting what they need. Any examples, anyone willing to share, if status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, or fairness might be important for you?
Yeah, the chat is blowing up. We got a lot of autonomy and certainty in there.
Cool.
Fairness as well. So it's been going pretty live right now.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Antonio. And thanks everyone for contributing. I can't wait to stop sharing so that I can read what you're saying. I'm really excited. Okay, y'all, for the sake of time, we're gonna have to skip reenactment, which again is that idea is, or when what we talked about, what I shared at the beginning was that sometimes we just don't make sense. Some of our behavior and the ways that we show up just is not logical for ourselves or for the people around us. And sometimes maybe if we, with this framework of reenactment, we can help to understand some of our unconscious behaviors and why some of those things, the ingrained patterns that we have because of what's happened across our entire lifespan, and connecting into the SCARF model, the things that are important to us in work, those patterns show up sometimes unconsciously in our behaviors. And when we see patterns that don't work for us, often we have to shift what we're doing if we want to see a different result. So that's something that you want to learn a little bit more about, and how to break reenactment cycles. I'm happy to chat over email. You can email me, and would invite you to close out, if you would answer one of these 3 questions in the chat as you're leaving: a head, heart, or feet. As we were together for the last about an hour, what was something that you learned? What was something that you felt? Or what's something that you're going to go, or you're going to take away from this with you? Something you learned, something you feel or felt, and what might the learning or this time together encourage you to do? And I'm going to stop sharing so that I can read responses and say goodbye to everybody. Yeah, thanks, Jay. Sometimes it takes a little bit of pausing, reflecting, trying to understand what's going on for ourselves. And if you've dropped something in the chat, I invite you to wave goodbye to your peers. It's great to be with you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your contributions. And I hope you have a great day. You're welcome, Sherry.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you everybody for joining the August Leadership Live. I surely learned a lot, and thank you for that insightful presentation. And Jay, yeah, thank you everybody for the help, and everybody have a great Wednesday. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. See ya.